Checkmate. You actually did it. You walked right into the lion's den, and you didn't just poke the lion, you walked up to it, looked it dead in the eye, and took the crown right off its head. And the best part, you didn't even realize you were doing it until you saw the look on their face. That moment when their entire, carefully constructed world started cracking right in front of you. That's what we're talking about today. That moment when when someone who thought they were untouchable, someone who had built their entire identity around being in charge, suddenly realizes that that game they have been playing has rules they don't control anymore. And you changed the rules without even asking permission. Let's paint this picture because you know exactly what I'm talking about. You are in a room, maybe a meeting, maybe a family gathering, maybe a group chat that's been toxic for way too long. And there is that one person, the person who walks in and energy shifts. Everyone tenses up. Conversations get careful. Jokes get measured. Opinions get swallowed because nobody wants to be the one who sets them off. It's like a subtle, silent panic that ripples through the room every single time they open their mouth. And here is the thing about that person. They know exactly what they are doing. They feed on that energy. They need it like oxygen. The way people defer themselves to them. The way people laugh at their jokes, even when they are not funny. The way people agree with them, even when they are dead wrong. That's not respect, that's survival. And somewhere along the way they started confusing the two. But you didn't show up with that playbook. You didn't get the memo that said you had to curtsy and bow and pretend like their cardboard crown was made of gold. You walked in with your own energy, your own voice, your own spine, and that was the first thing they threw them off. They couldn't read you. They couldn't predict you. They were not giving them, you were not giving them the little nods and smiles they were used to. They were leaning in when they spoke or laughing when they made their snide title comments. You were just there, solid, unbothered, and that alone made them uncomfortable because people like that cannot stand someone who doesn't need their approval. It's like a personal affront to their entire existence. How dare you to not need me? How dare you not want what I have to offer? How dare you exist in my space without trembling just a little bit? And then it happened. You said something. Maybe it was a question. Maybe it was a correction. Maybe it was just a simple observation that cut straight through all the nonsense they'd been spinning. But whatever it was, it landed hard. Yeah, you could see it in their eyes the second it registered. That flash of disbelief, that moment where they realized you were not playing alone. And then the recovery attempt, the forced laugh, the way they tried to brush it off like it didn't matter. But it did matter. Everyone in the room felt it. The air changed. And here's the thing about people who have been in charge for too long. They don't know how to handle when the script gets flipped. They have been running the same play for years. Yeah. Intimate. Dominate. Dismiss. But you didn't let them dismiss you. You didn't let them intimidate you. You just stood there with your calm, steady presence and let them stew in their own discomfort. You wanted to talk about humiliation. Humiliation isn't about raising your voice or making a scene. Humiliation is about showing someone that their power is an illusion and doing it with such quiet certainty that they cannot even argue. It's about watching them scramble for regain control and realizing they cannot. It's about seeing their mask slip just for a second and letting everyone else see it stop. Because that's the thing about narcissistic leaders. They are not just performing for themselves. They are performing for everyone around them, for you especially. Their entire sense of self depends on other people buying into the act. And when you stop buying it, when you refuse to play your part in their little theater, the whole thing starts to unravel. Now let's talk about their followers. Yeah, those poor souls who have been running around doing this person's bidding, hoping to earn a scrap of approval, hoping to be the favorite for just one day. They are the ones who really have this whole thing work. Without them, the leader is just a person standing alone in a room, screaming into the void. But with them, they are an army, a sad, desperate, spineless army. And you know what? They are not bad people. No, most of them are just scared. They have been conditioned to believe that this person holds all the keys, that if they step out of line, they will lose everything. Their standing, their connections, maybe even their job. So they go along. They nod, they agree, they tell themselves it's easier to just keep their head down and let the monster do its thing, do its work. But then you came along and you didn't just stand up to the leader. You showed everyone else that it was possible. You showed them that the monster wasn't actually that scary when you looked at it closely. That is it just was a poor person. A small, insecure, deeply fragile person who couldn't handle even the slightest bit of pushback. And that realization spread like wildfire through the group. Suddenly, the followers started looking at each other differently. They started whispering. They started remembering all the times they'd swallowed their words. All the times they'd laughed at jokes that were not funny. All the times they'd gone along with things they knew were wrong. And they started asking themselves why. Why had they been so afraid? Why had they given this person so much power? And the answer was that nobody had ever shown them a different way until you. The humiliation you inflicted wasn't about putting them down. It was about lifting everyone else up. It was about breaking the spell. It was about showing an entire group of people that they didn't have to live like that anymore. And that's why the leader is so furious. not just because you embarrass them, although that's definitely part of it, but because you stole their most precious resource, their control. You planted a seed of doubt in everyone around them. And once that seed is planted, it's almost impossible to uproot. People start remembering things. Yeah, they start connecting dots. They start seeing the patterns they were always there, that were always there, but never acknowledged. And once they see, they cannot unsee. You know what the irony is? The leader probably thought they were so clever. They probably thought they'd built this unshakable fortress of power, but it was always a house of cards. One stiff breeze, and the whole construction comes crumbling down. And you're not even trying that hard. You're just being yourself. You're just refusing to pretend. You were just standing in your truth and letting the chips fall where they may. And in doing so, you showed everyone what real strength looks like. Not bullying, not intimidation. And it's something the leader will never have, no matter how many people they try to control. Think about how many years that person spent building their little kingdom. All those hours of manipulation, all those carefully crafted power plays, all that energy poured into keeping people afraid. And with one honest moment, you exposed the whole thing as a fraud. You didn't just beat them at their own game. You showed them that their game was never worth playing in the first place. That's what really hurts them. It's not the loss of status or the embarrassment. It's the realization that everything they have worked so hard to build is meaningless. That their power was never real, that they were never the king they thought they were. They were just a performer, and you just pulled back the curtain. Now the followers are seeing it too. They are waking up, they are looking at this person who used to be terrified of, and they are starting to realize that they don't have to be afraid anymore. And that changes everything. Suddenly the leader is surrounded by people who don't need them, who don't worship them, who can see right through them. And there is nothing more terrifying to someone who's built their entire identity on being needed. Because once you are not needed, once people realize they can live without you, what are you left with? Just yourself. And if you're a narcissistic leader, that's the worst possible outcome, because they have never really liked themselves. That's the truth, that's psychology. They've always needed other people to reflect back an image of them that they couldn't quite believe on their own. That's why they need followers. That's why they need yes men. That's why they need people to prop them up. Because deep down they know they are empty. They know there is nothing there. And they will do anything to keep that truth as bay. But you forced them to face it. You held up a mirror and didn't look away. And the followers who saw that mirror, they started checking on their own reflections too. They started asking themselves why they'd been so willing to play along, why they'd been so scared, why they'd been content to be less than they could be just to avoid conflict. And you know what? Some of them are probably thinking you in their heads right now. Some of them are probably still processing all the ways you changed the landscape for them. Some of them are still trying to figure out how to be as brave as you were. But the point is, you started something that cannot be stopped. You lit a fire, and now everyone who was in that room, everyone who witnessed what you did, everyone who heard about it later, they are all carrying a little pit of that fire with them. They know now that the emperor has no clothes, and they cannot pretend they don't see it anymore. Good metaphor. What was it about you that made you different? What made you the one who could see through the facade when nobody else could? It's not that you were smarter, although you probably were, and right now, yes. It's not that you were braver, although you definitely were. It's that you didn't need anything from them. You were not looking for approval. You were not trying to climb some ladder. You were not playing their game. You were playing your own game. And your game didn't involve begging for scraps from someone who had nothing real to offer anyway. And that made you impossible to control. That made you impossible to manipulate. That made you absolutely terrifying for someone who had built their whole life around controlling and manipulating people, others, And now look at them. Look at the leader, the so-called king or queen of whatever sad little kingdom they built. They are not so regal now, are they? They are scrambling. They are trying to rewrite history. They are trying to spin the narrative. They are telling people, you are the problem. You are unstable. You are jealous. You are everything they can think of to make themselves look like the victim. But it's not working. It's not working at all. Because people saw what you did. People witnessed the moment of truth. And once you have seen something like that, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to pretending. You cannot put the mask back on once everyone's seen what's underneath. And that's what's killing them. The knowledge that they can never go back, that the illusion is broken forever. Really sad. And the best part, you didn't even have to try that hard. You just showed up as yourself. You just said what you needed to be said, and you just refused to play the game. And that was enough. That was more than enough. It was a master stroke, a checkmate, a move they never saw coming and couldn't counter, because you cannot counter authenticity. You cannot argue with truth. You cannot manipulate someone who doesn't care about your approval. You cannot intimidate someone who's already done the work of finding their own strength. You walked into that room with nothing to prove and everything to lose, and you still came out on top because your power doesn't depend on anyone else's permission. Here's what you need to understand about this moment that's probably still echoing in your mind. That look on their face when they realized they'd lost control of that room. That's going to live in your memory forever. And it should. Because that moment represents something huge. It represents the moment you stopped being a participant in someone else's drama and started being the author of your own story. It represents the moment you chose yourself over someone else's approval. It represents the moment you proved to yourself that you are enough, that your voice matters, that your truth is worth speaking even when it makes people uncomfortable. And there is no going back from that. Once you have tasted that freedom, once you felt what it's like to stand in your power and let the chips fall where they may, you cannot go back on being small. You cannot go back to keeping your mouth shut. You cannot go back to pretending that you don't see what's really going on. And the people around you noticed. They might not have said anything in that moment, in the moment. They might have been too shocked. They might have been too afraid to speak up. But they noticed. People always noticed. And they have been thinking about it ever since. They have been replaying that moment in their minds. They have been thinking about you, about what you did, about how you did it with such quiet grace and unshakable confidence. And they have been asking themselves if they could ever be that brave, if they could ever be that real, if they could ever stop caring about what people think and just speak their truth. And maybe they cannot yet. But you planted a seed. A seed grow, seeds grow. And one day some of those people are going to find themselves in a similar situation and they are going to remember you. They are going to remember how you stood up and refused to bow down. And they are going to do the same thing because that's how change happens. One person at a time, one brave moment at a time, one truth at a time. The other thing that's probably weighing on you is the aftermath. The subtle ways that the group has shifted, the way people treat you now, the way the leader treats you, or rather the way they avoid you because they cannot look you in the eye. It's different. It's always going to be different. You cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube as they say. The dynamic changed the moment you refuse to participate in their little fantasy. And that can be uncomfortable. It can be isolating. It can make you wonder if you did the right thing because people who have been conditioned to be complained sometimes struggle with the truth. They don't know how to handle it. They've been so used to the fiction that reality feels jarring and disorienting. But that's okay. That's part of the process. And eventually the ones who matter, the ones who are capable of growth and reflection, they will come around, they will thank you. They will see that you were not the problem. You were the solution. You were the one who showed them a way out of the maze they'd been trapped in. And the leader they are probably not doing great. And I don't say that to be cruel. I'm not a cruel person. I say it because it's important to understand what happens to people who build their entire identity on a foundation of sand. When the foundation crumbles, and it will always crumble eventually, they collapse. They don't have anything to fall back on. They have never developed real self-worth. They've never built real relationships. They have never cultivated the kind of deep, authentic confidence that can weather storms. All they have is their facade, and once that's gone, they have nothing. So they lash out, they blame, they make excuses, they try to rebuild the illusion somewhere else with different people. But it never works. Because once you have been exposed, once people have seen the real you, you cannot go back. You cannot pull the wool over anyone's eyes again. Not really. Not in a way that sticks. You might be asking yourself what this all means for me, for you moving forward. The answer is that you are not the same person who walked into that room. You have leveled up. You have expanded your sense of what's possible. You've proven to yourself that you have the courage and the strength to stand alone if you have to. And you don't even need to stand alone anymore. You're not alone because there are people around you who saw what you did and recognized something in you, something they want to be part of, something they want to learn from, something they want to emulate. Yeah. You've become a touchstone for them, a reminder that it's possible to be free, that it's possible to speak your truth, that it's possible to refuse the game and still win. You understand now that the kind of intelligence that really matters, the kind that actually makes you smarter than someone who's just good at playing power game, comes from a different place. It comes from knowing yourself. It comes from being willing to face your own fears and shortcomings and still show up anyway. It comes from the knowledge, the quiet knowledge that you can handle whatever comes your way because you have already been through worse. And it comes from the deep, unshakable understanding that your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion, approval. That kind of intelligence, the kind that cannot be manipulated or intimidated, that's the kind of intelligence that wins every time. Not through force, not through games, but through truth, through authenticity, through the simple, profound power of being exactly who you are without apology. So here you are now, changed, affirmed, relieved, and ready to whatever comes next. You did something really brave. You faced down a bully. You shook a system that needed shaking. You reminded yourself and everyone else that real power doesn't come from making other people small. Real power comes from standing tall in yourself. Real power comes from knowing who you are and refusing to be anyone else. Real power comes from the kind of truth that feels like a deep breath. A breath after holding it for years. Keep being that person. Keep showing up. Keep telling the truth. Keep refusing to play games that have no winners. You've already proven that you are way smarter than the person who thought they were in charge. Not just book smart or street smart, but people smart, heart smart, soul smart. You understand that the whole game is rigged, that the only way to win is not to play, and somehow by not playing, you won anyway. You won the respect of people who matter. You won your own self-respect back. You won freedom. Freedom that from needing anything from someone who had nothing real to offer. That's a kind of victory that changes everything. That's the kind of victory that echoes. And those echoes are still spreading. A word of caution for you that you likely already know. People are complex, and their recovery and response to your actions is going to be unique to them. Some are going to treat you like a hero. Others are going to keep their distance for a while, too shaken to know how to process what they saw. And that's okay. You gave them a gift. You gave. Whether they know how to unwrap it or not, that's your role. You are the person who shows up, who speaks her truth, who refuses to be small. And the world needs more of you. Yeah. The world needs more people who are willing to stand up and say enough, to show everyone else that the empirer is naked, to break the spell that keeps people trapped in cycles of fear and complaints. So take that win. Let it settle. Let it change you. The next time you walk into a room and feel the subtle, sticky pull of someone trying to control the narrative, someone trying to make themselves bigger by making everyone else smaller, remember this moment. Remember the look on their face when you refused to play along. Remember the feeling of standing in your truth and letting the chips fall, and then do it again. Yeah, do it again and again and again. Because that's how real change happens. That's how systems fall. That's how people are set free. One moment, one truth, one person who decided they'd rather be authentic than approved. You earned that, checkmate. You made that moment happen. The humiliation of the leader was never the point. It was the byproduct. The real victor was you. The real victor was everyone else who saw you and suddenly realized they had permission to be themselves too. The real victory was the breaking of the illusion. And that's not just a win for you. That's a win for everyone who's ever been made to feel small by someone who couldn't handle their own inadequacy. You are way smarter than their leader. But more than that, you are way freer. And freedom is the kind of intelligence that can never be matched. So wear that win. It belongs to you completely. Every part of it. Every part of it.